It's time for Aidan to sit on the hot seat because on today's episode of the Regression to the Mean podcast, we're going to rank the top 12 Dynasty quarterbacks heading into the 2024 offseason. I'm your host, Shaun Moran, and I am joined today by my fellow co-hosts, good friends, and knowers of ball, Keegan Thompson and Aidan Haller. Aidan, you were the man brave enough to sell Pat Mahomes on our buy-sell Dynasty series for January. And now you will face a YouTube audience that said things like, starting with Pat Mahomes is a really good way to get people to stop watching your video. I literally turned it off. And I've never heard of this channel, and this was my first video. Sell Mahomes? This is his buy window, LOL. And last but not least, these guys have no clue. It's some pretty damning stuff, Aidan. And today we get to talk more through the top 12 quarterbacks. So this is going to be your opportunity to kind of expand upon your take. How you feeling today, man?
I stand on my take. The only thing I regret was starting with it. That's probably something
that might have been
probably something like we put in the middle, but the logic is pretty sound around my take and like what position you're in and when you should and shouldn't be selling him. So no, I stand on that take. For those of you out there interacting with us, good or bad, we appreciate it, man. We're not running from anyone. We are no Donald Duck. I'm here. I'm responding. I stand on my take.
This man basically said, I stand on business. Just make sure you watch long enough to watch the ad. I love that.
I love that, Aidan. That's 10 toes, baby.
Keegan, how you doing, man?
I'm good. Yeah, I feel bad. Aidan got the onslaught of YouTube comments, but hey, all engagement is good engagement right now. So
Bingo.
Keep commenting, keep letting us know where we're wrong, when you think we're right. We appreciate it.
Before we dive into our top 12 Dynasty quarterbacks, two things. One, if you're a part of the 70% of people who enjoy our channel but aren't yet subscribed, hit that subscribe button to make sure you don't miss out on any Regression to the Mean content in the future. Two, if you love player prop apps like Prize Picks or Underdog, and you were trying to get on in on the action this Sunday for Conference Championship weekend, you're going to love today's sponsor of the Regression to the Mean podcast, Chalkboard Fantasy Sports. Chalkboard's picks game is similar to what you probably played, but what makes them unique is the fact that you could take alternate lines. So if you love Brandon Ayuk's over 80 receiving yards, you could take that down all the way down to 72 and pair that with some of your other favorite props that you were trying to take this weekend. Download the Chalkboard app with the link in the description of this video and sign up using promo code RTM to double your deposit up to $100. All right, boys. Let's kick things off with QB1. Are we ready to dive in? We ready to talk Dynasty quarterbacks? Are we good?
There's only one answer to start.
Okay.
There's only one answer to start. It is
do we say
none
it together?
Other.
Do we say?
Yeah, let's do it. Yeah, I like that.
All right, 3, 2, 1. Josh Allen.
Drew Lock.
All right, get out of here. There is only one answer here. QB1, 3 out of the last 4 years. QB2 the other year. The guy is just a fantasy cheat code. Still 27 years old. There is no one close to the right answer, or other than Josh Allen here, number one. What led you guys to this one? Like, was it hard for you? Did you consider anyone else, or how'd you land on Josh Allen here?
Honestly, it was so easy. It's like,
yeah.
You just look at the statistics. Like, he's the only player on this list to average 24 or more points per game in fantasy, like in 3 straight years. It didn't even matter who his offensive coordinator was this year, too. Like, they switched offensive coordinators in the middle of the year. He had 9 games of QB5 or better this year on the season. Like, he was just dominant. He has all the like throwing intangibles that you'd want in a fantasy star caliber quarterback. And he also set career highs in rushing touchdowns this year, too. So Josh Allen's certified number 1 for me here.
Yeah.
In my my little PFF database that I built, where I've downloaded the last 10 years of data, there have been 9 QB seasons total where a quarterback has cleared 400 points. Josh Allen has 4 of those 9 seasons. He's only been in the NFL for 6 seasons.
Who has the second most?
My QB2 has the second most, if we want to segue to our QB2, because my QB2 in all of Dynasty football is none other than Patrick Mahomes. Do you guys have Patty Mahomes 2 at 2? Or where are you
I do
guys
not.
at? Okay. You do not. Aidan, do you have Pat at 2?
I do.
Oh,
I
wow.
do have
That
Patrick
is a
Mahomes.
Keegan got
crazy.
I
outed. That
do
is
have Patrick Mahomes
crazy.
at 2.
Okay,
I do have
let's
Patrick
hear
Mahomes
it.
at 2.
Let's hear it. Let's hear your soliloquy to Mr. Mahomes.
So back to my sell, it's not that Patrick Mahomes is not a valuable player. He did come off like his worst year in quite a couple of years. You put a lot of that around a handful of different factors. The wide receiver core was pretty crap. The guy's 28 years old, absolute freak. He's probably a good positive regression candidate this year. And at the end of the day, too, he's just not like he's with Andy Reid. He's got that continuity. Andy Reid's not going anywhere. Patrick Mahomes isn't going anywhere. Still an awesome asset. But if your team sucks in Dynasty, go ahead and sell him and get some assets. Back to it. Go ahead and sell him because the QB landscape has tightened quite a bit. There's a lot of really good QBs. This was a tough exercise in terms of all 12 of these guys. I'd be happy with any of them on my roster. So Patrick Mahomes, yep, QB2, baby.
First and foremost, one of the reasons why I have Pat Mahomes as my number 2 quarterback in fantasy is because he might already be the greatest quarterback of all time. So that helps. That helps your case to be a top 2 finisher in our dynasty, in my dynasty rankings at least. He's had 2 of the 9 QB seasons clearing 400 plus points, and even in a down year, Mahomes finished as a top 8 QB in fantasy points. And you had already hinted at it, Aidan. Mahomes is due for some positive regression. His 389 rush yards were the most rush yards for a QB in the last 10 years for a QB that also hadn't rushed for a touchdown. So he should score a couple rushing touchdowns next season. He's going to throw a couple less picks because hopefully Sky Moore and Kadarius Toney aren't the wide receivers 2 and 3 in this offense. And hopefully we see a strengthened receiving core with another year of development for Rashee Rice. Maybe Travis Kelce plays a little bit better in 2024. And maybe they bring in another guy through free agency, or maybe they draft one of these very talented wide receivers in the 24 draft. So I think it might actually be time to buy Mahomes. The last time he had a down year, he responded with a 380-point fantasy season. So I think he bounces back in a big way. So I'm all in on Pat Mahomes entering his age 29 season. But Keegan, you have a different quarterback at 2. I've got an idea of who that quarterback is. I've got him as my QB3. Why don't you reveal
as well?
Does he wear purple? And is the answer Johnny? To a question he was posited on Twitter.
No, actually, my QB2 is I think still firmly Jalen Hurts right now, and I'm looking all around at people's rankings, and he's a little all over the place. Keep Trade Cut has him all the way down to 7, and I just it doesn't make any sense to me why you would have him so low. I mean, there's 3 quarterbacks on our list that all 3 of us have on our list that are a part of the 20 plus points per game club in both 2023, 2022, and 2021. You can hate on the tush push all you want, but Jalen Hurts finds his way into the end zone via rushing touchdowns. He's also the only player on this list to average 0.6 points for drop back for 3 straight years. Obviously, there were some coaching changes and Eagles aggression, and Jalen Hurts has still been elite in fantasy. I mean, he was QB2 this year, QB3 last year, and QB9 in his first full year as a starter when he wasn't even really unleashed as a passer yet. And on a per game basis and per drop back basis, he's still one of the most consistent fantasy assets on this list in terms of just how valuable he is when he's on the field. Long-term contract, has some of the best weapons in these top 4 quarterbacks that we've all discussed: AJ Brown, Devonta Smith, and Dallas Goedert. I'll take that trio over Lamar's weapons right now, and I'll take them over Pat's weapons for sure. He's also got one of the best offensive lines in football, number 1 O-line by PFF. And in 2023, he had 9 games of QB5 or better. And we're ready to push him down rankings when he's going to have one of the better situations going into next year and one of the most consistent situations. I love Jalen's weapons, and the keep trade cut, having him at 7 is so weird to me. I don't know how you bail on somebody who's been so valuable for fantasy for 3 straight years. So you got to have him at number 2 right now, in my mind.
I've got him at
number 2 or 3.
I've got him at 6.
I've got him at 7.
He's my 6th quarterback in Dynasty, and I just think he's a massive regression candidate. I think it's unsustainable to think that he can score 15 and 13 rushing touchdowns every year. Eventually, he's not going to score 10 plus touchdowns.
Still, there's only 3 quarterbacks who are a member of the
Yeah.
2020 club right now, and Pat's not one of them. Obviously, he had 2 really good years. He had a down year, but the way I look at it, if you're just looking at points and what he does for you on a per game basis, like how do you not have him in your top 5 at the very least?
It was pretty alarming to see how much he regressed as a passer without Shane Steichen as his OC. And his point per game production was supposed to be buoyed by an improvement in his passing production, where his passing production took a dip in terms of his, maybe not his raw counting stats, but like his efficiency metrics took a step back. And really, so did his rushing efficiency. He was buoyed by 15 rushing touchdowns. And I think 18% of his total points came from the tush push. Over 25% of his total points came from rushing touchdowns. Rushing touchdowns are typically not something you can bank on year in and year out. And again, if he scores 9 rushing touchdowns, he's the QB6 on a points per game basis. He's basically putting up the same amount of points as Joe Burrow. So I think overall, Jalen has been incredible in fantasy, but like, I don't know.
Yeah, that's what we're talking about. Fantasy. Like at the end of the day, who puts up points, right? Who put up points for your squad this year?
400-point seasons, and like Mahomes has a higher ceiling and he's a better player. So that's why I love Hurts, but it feels fluky. It doesn't feel that sticky. And maybe he is Cam Newton, but
I have 3 years of data telling me here that he's producing 21 points or more a game in fantasy. 3 years.
So 2 things that also went into my decision criteria. I actually have him at 7, so I'm actually 1 lower than Shaun.
Holy shit, guys!
Is one he's got a new OC. Like I know you mentioned like consistency. This is his 3rd OC in 3 years. I don't even think they've hired anyone for the role yet, have they? So like we don't even know what to expect in terms of play calling. Who's be calling plays? Jason Kelsey's gone, which we know is kind of like the cog to the tush push, kind of drives that entire play. And 3, Devonta Smith is going into his last season as a Philadelphia Eagle. There's no way they can keep both of those wide receivers. I know you mentioned like awesome receiving core. I think going into 2025, his weapons could look a lot different. So I'm not arguing like what he's already achieved. I'm more so trying to like project what I think, he does in the next 2 to 3 years. And I think there's like a couple red flags personally for me.
My Dynasty QB3, Aidan, I wonder if we're aligned here because
we are.
I've got Lamar Jackson here as QB3. Keegan, do you have Pat as your QB3 or Lamar as your QB3?
Lamar is QB3.
Okay. So
okay. I thought you were gonna go rogue and give me something else. I was like,
okay.
I love this guy.
The argument here for Lamar is pretty simple. He's coming off of career highs in pass yards, attempts, completion percentage, and yards per attempt. And he won the MVP, and he still only finished as the QB4 because he didn't score a lot of rushing touchdowns. And I think there's a lot of regression coming Lamar Jackson's way in the touchdown department over the next couple of seasons. And I think Todd Monken is locked in as the OC for at least another year. I feel quite good about Lamar. Thoughts on Lamar before we go to our next quarterback?
I love that Monken's staying. Love consistency with the coaching. I think he really excelled in this. He had his best passing season. I think like they've really unlocked that part of his game. And there's a ton of meat left on the bone in terms of touchdowns. Like the amount of times we watched Gus Edwards or someone else like score from inside like the 3-yard line. I think a lot of that had to do with like no Mark Andrews down in the red zone, who we anticipate obviously back this year, but 2024 and beyond. So yeah, really like Lamar Jackson. We're looking at a guy that's won the MVP twice in 5 seasons. Going to give you 700-800 plus yards on the ground, and it really feels like we're just starting to scratch the surface in terms of like what he can do on a year-to-year basis in terms of passing. So I love Lamar. Yeah, he's 27 years old. He's my QB3 firmly.
I don't have too much to say about Lamar. I feel like I could even push him up to 2 above Hurts. I think like his ceiling is so high because of his rushing ability. He's also the last member of that 2020 club that I mentioned, averaging 20 points a game in fantasy for 3 straight years. Like
there he is.
The offensive line is anchored by like a super impressive center like Tyler Linderbaum. Their offensive line unit ranked 5th at PFF, like per PFF this year. And I think it took a little while for the Monken offense to like settle in. But yeah, the back half of the year, things were cooking. It looks great. Love the core of players they have too with Zay, Bateman, Likely, Andrews, and like an emerging Keaton Mitchell. They'll always have a good run game as well too. So wheels up for Lamar Jackson. He's going to be locked in with Baltimore until like 2028 too. So
one crazy Lamar stat before we go to our QB4. Lamar's been in the league for 6 years. He owns 6 of the 13 top rushing seasons of quarterbacks over the past 10 years. And the most rushing touchdowns he's ever scored in a season is 7.
That doesn't feel right. But yeah,
no, he's
crazy.
like the anti-Jalen Hurts, right? So one of these days he's going to run into 10 rushing touchdowns, and it's going to be glorious for fantasy football purposes. Just to recap, Aidan and I have the same top 3. We have Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson. Keegan's top 3 is Josh Allen. He's got Jalen Hurts. He's got Lamar. Keegan, is this where Patrick Mahomes enters the conversation? Is your QB4?
Yeah, Pat.
Okay.
Yeah, Pat's at 4. And like if I had to tier them out, obviously it's like Allen, Lamar, and Patrick are like in their own S tier, right? Of like elite fantasy assets for Dynasty. I just like, if I'm going off what I saw this year and I understand like what their pass catching core is, the weapons they had, like I just have them slightly a tick down.
Okay. Aidan, who do you have it for?
I have the rookie sensation CJ Stroud at number 4.
This kills me that you guys have CJ above Jalen Hurts. Like it makes no sense to me.
I have CJ too.
What
I have
he
CJ
did this year
4.
was so special, man. Leading the NFL in yards per game as a rookie with, you could argue like it wasn't the best offense. Like the line wasn't good. The run game was non-existent. Tank Dell missed almost half the year. Nico was in and out of the lineup. You got some pretty good tight end production. I'm hoping Bobby Slowick stays. There is a chance he takes.
I think he will.
The Washington or Seattle job. Washington sounds like it's going to be Ben Johnson. I don't really know who's going to Seattle at this point. Like that one's
Quinn.
Yeah, I
had to bet.
I don't really know what's going on there. But assuming Slowick is there, I think the dude's going to have just another monster season. Like what he did with less is just special. Like he's just got it. He's so calm in the pocket, can make any throw on the football field. They've got a decent amount of cap space too. Like they're going to shore up that team, especially on the offensive side. The line's going to be better. Probably get him another pass catcher. I don't know, man. CJ Stroud just got it. Me and Keegan, we're all over this as QB1 in that class. I'm not counting out Bryce Young yet, but CJ Stroud is special, dude. The guy is barely 22 years old and just absolutely lit the NFL on fire. So yeah, that's my QB4, CJ Stroud, baby.
I've got Stroud at 4 as well. He's part of a list of quarterbacks here as rookies that have cleared 0.5 fantasy points per dropback. All right. Since 2016, here's the list of rookies who have cleared that 0.5 fantasy points per dropback. Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Deshaun Watson, Jalen Hurts, Justin Herbert.
Interesting.
Dak Prescott, Anthony Richardson, Brock Purdy, CJ Stroud, and Mitch Trubisky. So those are the QBs since 2016.
The longer the list got, the less luster it carried for me. The longer that list got.
I don't know, dude.
It got better for me with a sweet finale.
Good. With the 10 God love. Mitch Trubisky actually was a very good fantasy quarterback for stretches of his career, by the way.
He's a Pro Bowler. People forget.
Can't throw left. Again, all of those quarterbacks in year 2 went on to post higher fantasy point per game numbers. I just think Stroud's entering year 2 with just the arrow pointed up. Hopefully his pass catchers are healthy. His offensive line was super banged up. Hopefully that's a lot healthier. Year 2, Bobby Slowick. Maybe we see Bobby Slowick become a better play caller. And another offseason of development. They'll probably draft more receivers, more offensive weapons too. Maybe they bring in a more exciting running back. I just think the arrow's pointing up for CJ. And again, he led the league in pass yards per game with the lowest INT percentage of any quarterback. So it's pretty remarkable for CJ Stroud as a rookie. So I've got him as my QB4, and my QB5 is is none other than Anthony Richardson, who will be 22 years old heading into his year 2 season.
Whoa, that's higher than I expected from you, but I knew you would be highest on him. I knew you'd be highest on him.
Since 2013, only 7 quarterbacks with 98 plus dropbacks have cleared a 0.7 or higher fantasy points per dropback in a season. Those quarterbacks are Jalen Hurts, Justin Fields, Cam Newton, Ryan Tannehill, Nick Foles, Taysom Hill, and Anthony Richardson, right? Anthony Richardson has only played in 4 games, but he still accounted for 33% of his teams inside the 5 carries for 2023. In 4 games, he had 33% of the inside the 5 carries. He has good weapons. He has an elite running back, and he has a true talent evaluator at offensive coordinator in Shane Steichen. He's only going to be 22 years old heading into next season. I think the sky's the limit for Anthony Richardson if he can stay healthy.
That's higher than I expected, but my biggest argument
you guys
against
have poo-poo dynasty brains right now. This is crazy.
What do you mean? Richardson had a higher point per dropback than Jalen Hurts ever has, and he has Jalen Hurts kingmaker at offensive coordinator. Jalen Hurts is
obviously I have that stat down too. I'm sure we all have that stat down.
Is going to be the coordinator for the Eagles because it worked real well with the hand-selected Brian Johnson, who was supposed to be their big OC hire. Yeah, it turns out when Shane Steichen leaves the building, this man, this tush-push merchant isn't as good as a passer. So I'll take the guy that Steichen is grooming to be his quarterback any day of the week.
I have 2 things on Anthony Richardson, one good and one bad.
Let's hear it.
One, I'm really excited to watch like him and Jonathan Taylor like together next year. We were kind of robbed of that this year, unfortunately. But 2, I have him lower. I won't say where yet because of the injury concern. The guy is a walking hospital bill. I don't really have any confidence like he's ever going to play a full season. If we're just being honest, like if you go look at his injury history, the style of football he plays is just like Josh Allen on steroids. It's like 0 regard for his body when he's running with the football. But you can't deny the talent and the production in the limited time that we saw him this year. So if it like the sky's the ceiling with Anthony Richardson, I'm really worried about him staying on the football field. So that's why I baked in the risk to my ranking, which we'll see in just a couple here.
Okay, so who do you have at 5 then?
I've got Shiesty.
Joe Burrow. Who do you have at 5, Keegan?
CJ Stroud.
Okay, so we've got CJ Stroud. So let's hear Joe Burrow at 5, Aidan.
So this is the first one where we are actually all on different players, which is fun. There's no chalk here. I'm pretty much just throwing out 2023 for Joe Burrow. It's just a bit of a disaster. Like he came back too early. Was kind of injured, banged up, just missed too much time in and out of the lineup. It's just kind of a vibes play for me with Joe Burrow. He's still extremely young, had 2 extremely productive seasons prior to this one. It's just kind of getting rid of it. I don't care that his OC is leaving too. Like he doesn't call plays anyways. How big of an impact does he really have on Joe Burrow? I guess we're going to see next year, but Zach Taylor's calling the shots anyway. The big one is T. Higgins leaving or not, which I would guess yes. I don't think there's any chance they keep him and Tyler Boyd. I think there's a good argument to be made that both of them leave, but I'm kind of just banking on Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase are, both going to be in orange and black for probably at least another 5 years. And I love that combo. I think Joe Burrow's already proven it. The dude's 27 years old. Give me Joe Burrow. He is an elite thrower of the football. Is my QB5.
Well said. I just have him at 7.
Yeah.
So Burrow's my QB7.
There you go.
320 fantasy points in back-to-back years before he got injured this year.
I'm just throwing it out.
Asset.
Like this year, it's just I'm just going to pretend this year never happened because it was just a bunch of fugazi with the injuries.
Keegan, where did you have Burrow?
So I've got Stroud at 5 and then Burrow at 6. The CJ Stroud conversation we're having is crazy. Like, I get it. He's young. The draft capital's there, but like he only threw 25 or 23 touchdowns this year. Like he added 3 on the ground on only 39 attempts. Like that's pretty outstanding. But gosh, the hate for Hurts is crazy. and then the Richardson at 5 after 4 games. 4 games of Anthony Richardson, and you got him at 5.
It's
I don't
high
know.
for me
That's
too,
crazy.
Keegan. No, it's high for me too. I think me and
But
you will be closer to his ranking.
I mean, I get it. Like the CJ Stroud argument to be top 5 in Dynasty, like totally resonates with me. He's a number 2 draft pick. Like he's got the capital, he has the passing stats, he has the eye test. Like that's all good. We saw enough. I get it. But Joe Shiesty, I think it's 6. Like this is where it gets interesting in the rankings because now we're talking about like elite passing quarterbacks that have some limited upside on the ground, I think. And I'm not saying CJ falls into that, but I don't have enough data on him to see like, and we didn't really see it in college either. Like, does he have a rushing game? Like 3 rushing touchdowns is great, but now we're on Joe Burrow.
Yeah, not much.
Like even without Higgins and Chase both fully healthy in 2022, like he set a career high total in TDs without that. Like he's kind of like, to me, situation proof. The OC doesn't matter to me with Joe Burrow. Who is like wide receiver core doesn't necessarily matter to me either. Like he's just an absolute gamer. And whether it's Higgins and Chase and somebody else, I think he should still be like mid-tier QB1, like dynasty priority to have.
He's the only guy on our list so far that is truly tied to like an elite receiver, like for the foreseeable future, like elite, like the top 3, top 5 dynasty asset, like Joe Burrow and Chase for a while. Like I love.
Agreed.
That. I don't care. Like fill in the rest, man. Just fill in the rest. So
I think that's a good point. He is like he's the only person we've talked about on this list who has a receiving weapon that we value personally, all 3 of us, as like a top 3 dynasty asset as well too.
Okay, just circling back, my top 6 are Josh Allen, Pat Mahomes, Lamar, CJ Stroud, Anthony Richardson, Jalen Hurts. Keegan, your top 6 is Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts, Lamar, Pat Mahomes, CJ Stroud, Joe Burrow, right? Did I get that right?
Correct.
Okay. And Aidan's, yours was Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, CJ Stroud, and Joe Shiesty, correct?
Yeah, I haven't said 6 yet. I haven't said it yet.
Well, who's 6?
I got Herbie fully loaded, baby. Herbie fully loaded.
Nice.
I've just got a good gut feeling about this one. I love the Harbaugh hire. The dude just gets the most out of his QBs. I think we're gonna have Keenan Allen. If we're lucky, we're gonna get Malik Neighbors next to Keenan Allen next year, and it is gonna be one of the most beautiful displays of football on earth.
I have Herbert at 8, right? And
Yeah.
it's been kind of a tale of 2 halves of his career. The first 2 years of his career, 22 fantasy points per game, 23 fantasy points per game. Everything's going right. Shane Steichen's his OC. The next 2 years of his career, 17 fantasy points per game, 18.5 points per game. Lots of injuries. He has the rib injury, the finger injury. He's got injuries to his wide receivers, and he's got 2 different offensive coordinators, Joe Lombardi and Kellen Moore. So he's had 3 offensive coordinators in his last 3 seasons, which is just hard to build that continuity. A lot of people are going to point to the Harbaugh hire as like a negative one for his fantasy outlook, but look, Harbaugh was able to build an ultra successful offense for Alex Smith and Colin Kaepernick for the 49ers. And they might be a little bit run heavier, but I think Herbert's going to have an upgrade in offensive coordinator, and at least this organization is going to have culture. Like it'll have an identity. And I know that sounds lame, but I think that builds that continuity.
It's something the Chargers haven't had in like
they
years.
haven't had.
Their only identity is being like an underachiever or the little brother to the Rams now, and they're in Los Angeles. Like I think that goes a long way. I wanted to go and look, I just didn't have time. But I do remember Alex Smith and Colin Kaepernick being like very, very good under Jim Harbaugh. And you know what? Like he took a 6-10 team, like took over their roster and was supposed to be a rebuilding year, and all of a sudden they're 13-3. Headed to the playoffs. Like Jim Harbaugh was a good coach for the Niners. Like I don't want to like go back. We did this exercise with Mike McCarthy last year when we were looking at preseason quarterbacks and like what it would mean for Dak's passing output. And I don't want to go back down that and like try and pick apart what Harbaugh did, with his previous quarterbacks that he's coached. But I'm betting on Herbert as well too this year to just like culture, good coaching, health, and just a new year, I think will do wonders for him. And we'll probably see him get back to that 20-point per game mark again.
Give me Odunze or Neighbors or Bowers. Just give me one of those 3 with the 5th pick. And I'm so here for it. I think this you have Palmer, Allen, and one of those superstar young players. I'm in. I'm in on Herbert.
He's also only 26 years old when the season's going to start.
Keegan, who's your 7 and 8?
Yeah, my 7 is Herbert. So I know we just had that conversation.
Yeah, okay.
He's the next up in this list. Like I mentioned, pocket passing quarterbacks that kind of have some insane passing upside. But that's number 7 for me. And then
okay. I had Hurts.
And who's
there. I had Hurts.
Okay, so you had Hurts at 7. So who is your 8,
That's right.
Keegan?
This is where I have Anthony Richardson.
There we go. Nice. I had a feeling me and you were going to be pretty lockstep with Rich. I've also got
and I have the same stats too, like the points per drop back, how many inside the 5 attempts he had. It's all wonderful. I do love Steichen. I like the weapons they have. I think Pittman, Downs, and Taylor are enough for me to have comfortability that they have good weapons. Like Gardner Minshew was able to produce with this receiving core. I'm not sold on Alec Pierce or anything like that, but Jonathan Taylor fully healthy. Their offensive line took a massive bounce back year. It's still not perfect situation for them, but they were so much better. And they were graded the 3rd best O-line by PFF.
Coaching matters, baby.
And look, Richardson at 8 is the best ability is availability in football. If you can't play, I don't care how electric you are. It's a problem for sure.
Thank you. Yep, I agree.
4 games is a concern, and we all like Anthony Richardson. We all want him to succeed, but
it's got to be baked in.
Have to take it into account.
It's got to be baked in. This is my long.
I honestly feel 8 is a little high. I'm just getting tantalized by his age and draft capital, and of course what I saw in 4 games, but he didn't even finish 4 games. He only started 2 games and finished 2 games fully. So if you look at it that way, it's even smaller sample size to look at. So
but I'm going to
young,
the
he's
injuries.
electric.
It was
injury
awesome.
stuff. The injury stuff though, look, he got a concussion, okay? So he hit his head on the back of the turf. That's one thing. And then he separated his shoulder because some dude fell on him. No, but it's not like he has hamstring issues like Christian Watson, right? That's an issue, right?
But injuries are injuries, though. If he's not, I don't care what it is.
Injuries are injuries, though. But anytime a quarterback is a running quarterback, they have a higher likelihood of getting hurt because they carry the ball and they take more hits. So it's just at the end of the day, are we going to play scared, or are we going to try and win fantasy? Are we going to try and win fantasy games, right? I'm sorry, but at the end of the day, he has one of the best offensive coordinators in football. He has a solid offensive environment. He's 22 years old. And when he played, he got better with each and every single passing rep. And he has the potential to break fantasy football. I think the injury stuff is overblown. And again, if you were so concerned with injuries, you would have no Christian McCaffrey. And now he's the best player in fantasy football.
I get it. Playing the injury, using the injury thing is, call it what you want. But
look,
in Dynasty, I factor it in even more.
I think there's some confusion on here, about what I'm trying to say here, though, because one of my lessons learned was nobody's injury prone, and I believe that. You can't enter a season with injury proneness, but if I'm ranking people based off what I know about them and what I've seen, I have to look at the injuries and say, well, he only played 4 games and he only finished 2 of them. I don't have a lot to go off of. It was electric.
That's fair.
And it was
limited
fun.
Sample size.
I'm not
limited
saying
sample size is fair.
It was a really good
injury. Correct.
It was a nice summer fling. It was it was so short. It was gone before you knew it. But it was great. It was great. And you're just I wonder if we'll ever get that again with Anthony Richardson. So yeah, hopefully he's back next summer for us.
Shaun, at 8, I think you already said, but this is where you have Hurts.
I have Herbert at 8. So I've got Hurts at 6, Burrow at 7, Herbert at 8. And
okay.
At 9, I've got Kyler Murray.
Me too,
Kyler
actually.
Murray entering the
I thought that was
conversation
gonna be
for anyone else
unpopular.
here?
I've got Kyler.
He's my next.
Kyler kind of slept on. He averaged 19 fantasy points per game while he was learning a new offense, didn't have wide receivers to throw to, didn't have a training camp, and was recovering from a late season ACL tear from the year prior. Yep. I've talked about this. I'm a big fan of Cardinals OC Drew Petzing. He was previously under Stefanski. I thought he had a really strong offensive plan and environment for Kyler, especially when he came back. And I loved the fact that they used Kyler so heavily as a red zone rusher. 2 of the biggest fantasy winners this year were Josh and Jalen for their high red zone rushing usage. They both were the only 2 guys to go over 40% of their team's total inside 5 rushing attempts in 2023. Kyler finished 3rd with 35% of the total team attempts. He only played in 8 games, right? And on top of that, he still had a higher explosive run rate than Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts, and Lamar Jackson post ACL tear. Like, I just feel like if you give him some legit receivers to throw to, and he's now a year after his ACL tear, I think Kyler is in a phenomenal spot to bounce back and prove to everyone why he's one of the few guys that's gone over 400 total fantasy points over the past 10 years. I'm in on Kyler at QB9.
I like it.
Yeah, I put a little note that like he might just be underrated at this point. I feel like if I was on the buy show, Kyler Murray might have been an option for buying a quarterback in Dynasty. Like, averaging 19 points this year, 19 last year, 21 and a half the year before. And also, like, Gannon just gave that big vote of confidence in Kyler too recently, coming out like, this is our franchise QB. They're going to draft Marvin Harrison most likely in this draft, or like somebody like a Malik Neighbors, depending on how the draft shakes out. Trey McBride in year 3. Maybe you bring back Hollywood Brown. I'm not sure. But like, does it really matter for Kyler? I don't know. Like, in the 8 games, he only failed to throw for 200 yards in just one start of those 8. He had a TD in all but one start. And he also had multiple scores in 2 games. And then the rushing side of it, first 3 games back, had a rushing TD from injury. And he had at least 20 rushing yards in all but one start in his 8 games this year. Like, I would be buying Kyler Murray. I think.
He's going to be 27 too. Like, I think he's younger than I think a lot of people like realize. It's a good time to buy Kyler Murray. I thought I'd be alone there at 9. So, I'm good.
I just have him at 10. So I'm right there. My 9 is going to make Aidan puke.
Yes. He's my 10. He's my 10, baby.
Yes.
He's my 10.
Jordan Love.
He's not.
I think Jordan Love has
not
firmly cemented himself as a top dynasty quarterback. Like,
no.
Doesn't he just give you the vibe of Aaron Rodgers, Aidan? Like, with the little mix of Brett Favre, like just a little mix of Brett Favre.
Not at all. Not at all.
It turns out that if you sit behind one of the best quarterbacks to ever play the game and learn from him, like, you can make all the throws from the pocket, off balance, out of structure, name the situation. He's prepped for it. First full season as a starting quarterback, threw for 4,100 yards, 32 touchdowns, 11 interceptions, and also had 250 yards on the ground and 4 rushing touchdowns. Good for QB5 on the year. I think he just has such a high like ceiling because he is like more of a pocket passer, but he has a little bit of rushing upside. I mean, he averaged just short of 20 fantasy points per game, which is like elite territory this year. Was averaging about a half a point per drop back. Jordan Love played his ass off this year. I think he deserves a spot in this conversation for like up and coming young quarterbacks. And he's definitely somebody like 25 years old too. He's a couple months younger than Herbert. He's younger than Burrow. He's obviously younger than Mahomes, Lamar, Allen. He's even a little bit younger than Jalen Hurts.
To clear 330 fantasy points in your first year as a starter, throwing to all first and second year wide receivers and tight ends, with A.J. Dillon as your primary running back for most of the year, is mega impressive. He's about to get paid, man. He's going to be one of the highest paid quarterbacks in the NFL. And as long as Matt LaFleur is calling plays, I'm pretty in. To throw 30 touchdowns in your first year as a starter when you're basically on a prove-it deal is fucking nuts. I just had to watch him play the 49ers, and I was just really not happy having to play him. He would not get sacked. He made so many crazy off-platform throws. He was basically the only reason they were in it, in my opinion. Just ultra impressive season for Jordan Love. I've got him at QB 10 as instead of 9, but I totally see where you're coming from, Keegan, to have him at 9. Aidan?
No, it's good arguments you made. I don't have him there. I think he's someone that I have upcoming. Like he's a huge product of scheme. The amount of times like Jordan Love's hitting a wide receiver like 15 yards wide open which is like a huge testament to MLF. I thought LaFleur was a Rodgers product, and I was wrong. I think he's just in a really good position. His wide receivers are, I think, better than we thought in terms of like these young guys. And yeah, MLF is just like dialing up, just like wide open hitters left and right for him. So, no, I think he's good. I have him just outside of my top 12.
Who do you have at 10?
So like talking like a product of scheme. This is like right down the alley, and it's Brock Purdy.
Nice. Wow.
I think
got him
like,
at 11.
It's just
I've got him at 11.
It's a really safe argument to be had. The guy, was QB6 this year, and like it's really nothing all that flashy. Again, like dude, just wide open hitters left and right. You got Christian McCaffrey at running back. You're going to have another 2 years at least that I think, he's got a really good supporting cast around him under his, like Walmart salary right now. So it's like, it's just, I really like it. It's like you could pencil Brock in my opinion, to be like a top 5 or 10 QB, like pretty safely next year.
Dude,
I'm not dying to draft him early on in drafts, but it's like, it's probably going to go pretty well for you, barring any significant, health, for someone on the roster. So no, I like Brock, quite a bit at 10, and I feel good about it there.
Yeah, if you were building out a super flex like dynasty team and you're doing a startup draft and you're kind of at that later range of picks, like I think Brock Purdy is like somebody I would definitely target to try and build out,
for sure.
Maybe a more highly skilled positioned like base team. But I mean, the funny thing is, like, is it the weapons? I don't know. Is it Brock? I don't know. But if you
I don't
just
know
look
yet
at fantasy,
either.
if you just look at fantasy, there are only 2 quarterbacks this year that were above him in fantasy points per dropback. And it's Anthony Richardson and Josh Allen. That's it. And then it's Brock Purdy. I mean, he was just a stud this year, 31 touchdowns, 4,300 yards. I have him at 12. I put a note that it's probably too low, but there's other players above him like Kyler and Dak I have at 11 that I think have a larger body of work that I could reference. So, but I had Brock. I had to put him in here. I'll keep him firmly at 12.
Yeah, I had him at 11. He's finished top 10 in fantasy points per drop back in back-to-back seasons. He has the best supporting cast in football for at least one more year. And Kyle Shanahan loves him. He had Brock drop back and throw 39 times in the pouring rain in a must-win game. He would have had Jimmy throw the ball 6 times, right? So Shanahan is Brock is his guy. And as long as he's tied to Shanny, it's really hard to keep him out of the top 10.
Yeah,
this isn't going to be an opportunity here for me to cape or defend Brock. I think Brock is a really good quarterback. And for fantasy, he's been excellent since the day he stepped on the field. So I think he's an easy top 12 guy.
Did
I did not
highest? Did I have him the highest?
Yeah, I think you do. You had him at 10. I didn't have Dak in my top 12.
I don't
Aidan,
have
did you have Dak in there?
Did someone say they had Dak? Keegan, you said
Yes.
Yeah.
Keegan had Dak. So let's have the Dak conversation.
At 10? Sorry.
Yeah.
What number are we at?
He had Dak at 11, I believe.
Who was your 10?
Yeah.
Or was it Love? Sorry.
My 10 was Kyler. So 9 Jordan Love, 10 Kyler Murray,
Gotcha.
11 is Dak,
Okay.
12 is Purdy. Like there's a lot of stuff that goes into ranking dynasty quarterbacks, age, draft capital, all the things. But Dak has like one of the longest careers of anybody on this list. And he's been a very good fantasy quarterback for almost all of his career. I mean, definitely the oldest player on the list. He'll be 31 when the season starts, but he's averaged 20 or more points a game in 2 of the last 3 years. And he averages like half a point per drop back for 3 straight years. 3rd highest scoring QB in 2023, QB 18 in 2012, only played 12 games. It was QB 7 in 2021. 2023 stats were 2nd most yards he's thrown for in a season, 2nd most TDs he's thrown for in a year as well. And like, one of the cool things about Dak that we talked about beginning of the season with the McCarthy thing, I'll bring that up again. It's like, is Dak going to rush more, right? Like he was buoyed by some rushing statistics early on in his career that propelled him to like good fantasy statistics. But, it's the highest total of rushing attempts he's had in a season since 2019. Highest rushing yards he's had since 2019 as well. He also had 2 rushing touchdowns this year, which is the most he's had since 2020. The conversation we had about Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase, Dak Prescott's the only other person on this list to be attached to a top 3 dynasty wide receiver.
Yep.
And CeeDee Lamb. Like he's got the 8th ranked offensive line by PFF. Mike McCarthy was great for them this year. And like you can talk about the playoff losses and lack of success for them, but I don't care because it's fantasy and weeks 1 through 17 matter. And in weeks 1 through 17, Dak was awesome this year. He had 7 games of QB4 or better in 2023. I mean, you're talking about fantasy, and I know we want to incorporate age and things like that, but Dak puts up points for you. Like Dak is a valuable fantasy asset and just almost peaked in some career statistics this year. So it's hard for me to leave him off this list. I can't sit here and put Trevor above him because he's younger and has good draft capital. I can't knock him for somebody like Fields right now because he's done more than Fields as a passer. So I think he belongs until I see a drop off in his play. I think he has a firm argument to be, and that Brock and Dak could probably switch for me, right? Because Brock's a little bit younger and what he just did was insane. Like I could switch those two, but Dak gets a seat at my table for sure.
Yeah, I no notes. I mean, that's perfectly said. I could have easily had him in 12, in my 12th spot. I probably should have. Now, after listening to you,
I was like, that's a pretty good pitch.
Yeah, my 12 is Trevor. This is it, right? Have you revealed your 11th?
No, I have not.
Aidan?
No, I haven't.
Who's your 11th?
It's him. It's him. You thought I was keeping him out. You thought I was
Jordan Love and a firm 11 spot for Justin Fields. No bias.
The person that you're taking a break from for the next month to see if your relationship's going to work for years to come.
Yeah,
he had to go to bat for him one last time.
This is toxic.
Still committed?
He's going to be an NFL starter for the next 2 seasons, regardless of where it is. He's coming off a year like he was just QB6 in 2022, and the guy's still not even 25 years old.
He broke fantasy in 2022. By
absolutely broke this slate.
It was insane.
So it's like
slate has been broken.
It doesn't really matter, in my opinion, where he's gonna end up. I think his days in Chicago are over. But let's say
probably
he ends up in Atlanta and has that supporting cast the next 2 years.
Oof.
He goes to not Oakland. He goes to Vegas, and he's got Tay. He's got Josh Jacobs.
Cheeky. Like kind of cheeky.
Wherever he goes, they're picking up his 5th year, and he's starting for at least 2 more years in the NFL. Sure, there's risk.
Yeah.
We don't know where he's going outside of like Lamar. It's kind of Justin Fields in terms of like that true game breaking ability in both rushing and passing. So, ton of uncertainty where he's going. But
I wanted him in there, but just lack of contract and organization.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, it's a ton of risk putting him up there.
It was just hard to justify it. But in terms of fantasy ceiling, easy.
Yeah. If I was continuing my list, like I think Justin Fields is probably going to sit at 13. Then maybe I have Trevor. Then maybe, I don't know, Tua. Like I don't know where to go, but I have Fields like in my brain above Lawrence and Tua in that range. Like maybe similar to Dak because, the 2022 season, his fantasy points per dropback at 0.7 points per dropback are the 3rd highest on this list in the last 3 years. It's Richardson's in this year, which is 0.76. It's Hurts in 2022 at 0.71. And Justin Fields was right behind him, a 0.01 points off per dropback.
That's insane.
Like he has all the upside and elite
special.
like rushing ability you want out of a Konami code running back. Where's he going to go? Where's he going to play? I don't know. But
I'm saying Atlanta.
He could talk me into that.
It has to be Atlanta.
Vegas could make sense because it's
Vegas
out
makes
of the
a ton
conference.
of sense.
Could be out of the conference.
Did you say that you had Trevor at 12, by the way, too?
I had Trevor at 12, yeah.
One thing I want to note about Trevor is if T. Higgins gets out of Cincinnati, don't be surprised if he ends up in Jacksonville. I think they would happily replace T. Higgins for Calvin Ridley. That dude was kind of a drop machine, and I don't think quite what they signed up for. If they could reunite Trevor Lawrence with T. Higgins and you still got Christian Kirk and Evan Ingram, I think Trevor Lawrence rebounds in a huge way next year. So I just want to add that little food for thought.
I just have to see something else out of Trevor. Like I have to see something
else. He's a terrible decision maker. Terrible decision maker.
We're recording this on Friday the 26th.
Yeah.
Did you see the Trent Baalke press conference?
No.
It did not make me want to put him at 12. The Jaguars are headed for more, I think, instability.
That's fun.
It's kind of been low-key malpractice. It's kind of malpractice what they did. Like Doug Peterson in 2022 propels Trevor Lawrence to the highs of his career so far. And then he just gives up play calling to Press Taylor. And that was clearly an issue. They had no run game. They had no continuity with their run and pass game. Yeah. He was injured, making terrible decisions. Like Trevor Lawrence, the talent is undisputed.
Unreal arm.
Unbelievably talented. But like we're looking at another situation here where Baalke is not aligned with the coaching staff and with Doug Peterson. Trent Baalke survived the Jim Harbaugh exit. He remained the GM of the 49ers for 2 more seasons. Like this guy is a cockroach. He does not go away and he destroys teams. And like I'm worried about Lawrence. This guy has not really had a major fantasy season yet.
No.
He hasn't even had his Jordan Love moment where Jordan Love scores 330 fantasy points. Like,
He gave us like
I'm
half of
still
the
kind
season.
of waiting here.
Yeah, we got like half a year.
We got half a
he's
year.
also-
like
He's going to be 24 entering next year too. Like,
yeah,
I think that's the thing with both
super
him
talented.
and Justin Fields. Like, both of the maybe the only two guys in that class that I think like still have a chance to like be NFL starters.
Trey now.
No, Trey now is gone. Justin Fields will be 25. Trevor Lawrence will be 24 when the 2024 NFL season starts. So it's like there's still a ton of football left for both of these guys, but yeah, bad vibes for both of them, which is why they're both here.
You know what matters in fantasy on a week-to-week basis is like the points you put up. And I'm looking at so many quarterbacks on this list that have put up more points per game in a single season than Trevor. Basically, everybody on this list has hit at least 19 points a game per season. Like, and Trevor's the only one who's never reached that mark on our list.
Yeah.
Brutal. That's my 12. We've all unveiled our 12, right?
Yeah. Do we want to recap them real
It's out in
quick?
the ether. Yeah. So my 12 here, just to recap, I finished with Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, CJ Stroud, Anthony Richardson, Jalen Hurts, Joe Burrow, Justin Herbert, Kyler Murray, Jordan Love, Brock Purdy, Trevor Lawrence. Aidan,
I
who's your
had
12?
Josh Allen, Patty Mahomes. I redeemed myself. Lamar Jackson, CJ Stroud, Joe Burr, Justin Herbert, Jalen Hurts, a Rich, Kyler, Purdy, him, and T-Law.
And Keegan?
So I've got Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts, Lamar Jackson, Patrick Mahomes, CJ Stroud, Joe Burrow, Justin Herbert, Anthony Richardson, Jordan Love, Kyler Murray, and then Dak Prescott, and then Brock Purdy to close it out.
Wow.
Those are pretty different lists.
We did it.
Those are different lists.
We did it.
That was
a lot of the same names. Just kind of throwing it around. You can tell who like what type of flavor is the fantasy option for each guy, right? There's the security. There's the guy who's willing to put his net worth into Bitcoin, who's got Anthony Richardson at 5, right? So
Anthony Richardson is Bitcoin.
Making some risky moves. But thank you everybody for tuning in. We appreciate you for tagging along and being a part of the Mean Team. Thank you guys for joining for your rankings as always. And until next time.